Good evening, everyone, and welcome for another of these delightful sessions that we have here. The musicians are really extraordinary, and it is a great appreciation that we have for the presentation that was given to introduce us with such delight and understanding. This evening, I would like to say something about what I will talk about tomorrow more fully. I would like to talk about three things. And the one has to do with the issue that's before us. And the second is the issue that's before us, and then how we're to understand it. The third is, the second is more the political issue. The first will be the basic problem that faces our civilization, our entire society. Jim had the idea of what he called the second law. Well, it's the second law of thermodynamics, the law of entropy. That's the expenditure of energy. We still don't quite understand the developmental character of the universe and the expenditure of energy that is the dying down or the exhaustion. The three laws of energy, or the first two laws, is simply that energy, the amount of energy is never changes, or that is, it's a constant. But there's the great difference is between useful energy and energy that can no longer be used. And the way in which the universe functions, it seems to have stored up enormous energies. And in a certain balance, and in a certain creative context, until humans come along. And it's the human equation that is the challenging situation. And as I express it, our basic issue is how do humans relate to the universe around us. It's a question of how do we interact with it? How do we enter into the larger purposes of the universe? How do we keep it in its creative dynamics rather than its dissolution dynamics? And this evening, Ruth mentioned something extraordinary to me. She mentioned a book that crystallized this idea that Jim had, and it's the origin of these discussions. There's a book that has come out called The Last Hours of, what is it? The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. Isn't that an amazing title? Because we are living on sunlight, stored sunlight. The oil, the petroleum, our clothes are made largely of petroleum, which is spun into fibers. It's sunlight. Is what makes the petroleum. And all the organic processes are ways in which sunlight is stored and then is made available. So it's our food, the stored sunlight, our clothes, our transportation, the petroleum and the gasoline, the automobile, not only the gasoline, but the tires and the roadbed are petroleum based, which is, again, stored sunlight. So that the energy that we are using now, take the petroleum, for instance. I have a chapter in a new book that I have done called The Great Work. The Great Work I identified as the transition that's before us from a period of the humans being a devastating presence on the functioning of the planet to the humans being a mutually enhancing presence to the planet. It's a very simple thing. How does the human change from its destructive phase to a more creative phase? So, and basically the petroleum period, the stored sunlight, and it's more in the way in which we use it most, probably that which is most available to us and under our control, is how we use the sunlight. We do it with gardening, we do it with our cultivation of the land, we do it, the trees do it. It's a very, very basic process. But then, when we come to the human, you see what has happened, is that humans have an awful lot of cunning, but, and for a while, we can subvert processes and use for our human trivial purposes what appears to be a creative way. For instance, invention of the automobile and the airplane. We consider the automobile such a wonderful thing, but the ones who created it didn't have the least idea of what an automobile is. And to this day, our society doesn't have the least idea of what an automobile is, or what its impact is in changing the whole way of life and so forth. Now, back of this, there's one other thing that is rather striking, is that the people who do such enormous damage to the natural world do it for good purposes. In other words, the problem is not the bad people, but the good people. It's the good, I say good people are dangerous. Because when good people do not have an adequate idea of what's good, well, they're the most terrifying people. Good people without an adequate idea of what's good are the most destructive people. In fact, there is a book written on our civilization. You have to push this back to what's good in our whole civilization. We have to rethink the whole Western civilization. In fact, there's a book been written recently by Chelsea Denning. I think it's the title, some of you may correct me, under the title, My Name is Chalice, that is, it's Chalice. My name is Chalice, and I'm in recovery from Western civilization. My name is Chalice. Now, all of us can identify with that, because this meeting is really how do we recover from Western civilization. Because Western civilization is not guiding us in any adequate manner. In fact, we have become Western civilization, become the most devastating force on the planet. Let me sit down. So, our gathering here, we can consider as a stage in the recovery of our society from Western civilization, including the vulnerable side of our religious tradition. Because it's clear that our religious tradition is itself not providing the guidance or the energy to deal with the present situation. So it's a restructuring. What we need is, I sometimes think of it as a new comprehensive vision, a meta-religious movement, something beyond, something similar to, that nothing like this has been needed since the foundation of the great religions. And that's a rather fantastic statement, that none of the cultures, including the religious cultures and the cultures generally, are expressions of some basic religious commitments. But in my view, none of them at the present time are in their present situation are dealing with or are capable of dealing with the issues that we face. It's a kind of a strong statement, I'm sure, because to say that must rethink the human. I have a paragraph that I wrote once. It's an essay, or it's a chapter in the book that will be coming out next week on the great work. In fact, the great work is a book that focused precisely on this issue. How do we get beyond the limitations of the traditions that humans are caught in at the present time in such a devastating mode of presence. I don't want to be too heavy with this, but there again, if the last hours, what is that now?
Ancient sunlight.
The last hours of ancient sunlight. Wow, that's powerful. How can we not only manage that? How do we manage the last hours of ancient sunlight? How do we manage the last pools of petroleum that we have? And particularly, now this is most important for this reason, the children. We in the 20th century have been learning how to establish a context of life, a petroleum context of life. If you were to sum up the 20th century, that's one way you could sum it up. In the 20th century, we have reshaped the human venture with petroleum and all of its possibilities. And we have gotten to, in all our scientific research and all that is involved in this. So, how do we manage? I'm sure it's a challenging thing. How do we manage a change from a diminishment of existence to an augmentation of existence? In other words, it's not how do we submit to this, but how do we change the orientation such that we store sunlight instead of exhaust it? How do we store sunlight for the children? Because in a certain sense, it's a difficulty if we hand our children an empty barrel of sunlight. And how do we refill the containers? How do we, but there again, we have to, in a sense, invent a new planet. Because the petroleum's gone, it's gone. Never again will petroleum be made in any amount. And so that's over. So I propose this, and I bring this up, and the central issue I have reduced to a rather simple statement. And I presented early in this book, The Great Work. It's a very simple statement. What is our primary relationship of the human with the universe around us? Now, there's one central basis of the difficulty that we're experiencing in, is our society has made use the primary relationship with the world about us. Use. And tomorrow maybe we could talk about this a little bit, about in this state, in North Carolina. How has that found expression? The youth relationship and how this state has been used. You're aware of the fact that one of the most awesome things one human being can say to another is, "You used me." And we consider that the most awful thing that one human being, way in which a human being can relate to another, to use a person in a way that is dishonorable or which exploits a person for use without, apart from the intimate relationship that should exist. Now, I have a way of identifying how should we relate to the world about us, because this is the answer to the question that I posed for you, of how do we begin to adopt a viable and an acceptable and a fulfilling relationship to the world about us. I put it this way. As regards children, I always think of the children. The child, this comes from a book of verse for children that somebody sent me not long ago and asked me to comment on. I commented, or in the process expressed a kind of an overall view of a child, my understanding of the child. And I put it this way: the child awakens to a universe. The mind of the child to a world of wonder. Imagination to a world of beauty. Emotions to a world of intimacy. It takes a universe to make a child, both in outer form and inner spirit. It takes a universe to make a child. It takes a universe to educate a child. It takes a universe to fulfill a child. And the first obligation of one generation in relation to the succeeding generation is to bring these two together so that the universe is fulfilled in the child and the child is fulfilled in the universe. It's that simple. Now, our primary relationship, in other words, and this has to happen before anything else happens, like when we meet each other, our first response needs to be wonder, beauty, and intimacy. It's what we expect from each other. It's why life is livable. It's why we feel healed by each other, or we feel healed by the forest. It's what Dostoevsky mentions so often in his works, that like at the key point in Crime and Punishment, when Raskolnikov, who had murdered a woman and was beset with all kinds of torment inwardly and so forth, and he comes to the point where he asks, what was the young woman's name that he asked? A typical Russian name, Sophia or something of that nature. And what to do? And she said, go to the center of the city, kneel down and kiss the earth, and then declare to the four quarters of the universe, I am a murderer. It was this, he needed to be forgiven by the universe, not simply by humans or this way. That there's a way in which we disturb it. You get it again in the Rime of the Ancient Mariner of Coleridge. And you remember that magnificent poem where he felt a certain repulsion at the slimy creatures of the sea. And as a penalty, the whole ship was becalmed. He had to wear a bird around his neck, and the soldiers were all died. The sailors all died, and so forth. And then, eventually, he was changed, and he had a movement of affection for the creatures of the sea. And as soon as that bond was established, everything changed. The wind came up, the sailors arose from and the healing took place. But it was something that happened through this basic relationship of humans with the rest of the planet, on the basis of this type of healing. This, I would say, or this rapport with the world about us is what needs to happen. It has to be a new sense of the universe. We have to have this mystical sense of the flowers, the trees, the butterflies, and how precious these things are. How precious the grass in the field. How precious the world in which we live. And it tells us that I will feed you, I will clothe you, I will shelter you, but do not use me in a destructive way so that these aspects of my being are destroyed in favor of some kind of trivial process, or even for accumulation of money or whatever. So this I suggest is the profound change that's needed. Now, here in North Carolina, we have these four regions. We have the mountains, and in some ways the oldest mountains in the world. The Southern Appalachians were so rich in their biological complexity. Why? Because during the glacier period, when the glacier came down and everything north of a line that would go, say, from New York, from Long Island across through, it's called the Wisconsin Glacier. It didn't go far below New York City. Long Island is half glaciated and half not glaciated. And until when I was living there on the bank of the Hudson, 17,000 years ago, which is a rather recent period in a way, there was a mile of ice over that region. So that it's since then that has died down. No, it wasn't a mile. It was 1,700 feet. That's what it was, 1,700 feet. But It was a fantastic thing. Everything north of that is new. The trees are new, the animals are new. But there was a refuge in the southern Appalachians. And that's one of the reasons why the southern Appalachians are so rich. That the vegetation moved south. The animals came south as a refuge during this period of ice and darkness that covered the northern region. Now, this period, gave us an extremely rich heritage. In fact, as I will point out tomorrow, the heritage is equaled in its type of forest and the type of life systems, the biosystems that inhabit this area, is equal by only one other place in the world. It's a place in Western China. Now, it's such a precious thing. It's unique. Of course, many different places in the world are unique, but for the richness, because the Appalachian Mountains, they are rounded mountains. They go back to the Paleozoic, back several hundred million years. The Alps and the Rocky Mountains and the Himalayas are all recent. These are the old mountains. They go back far beyond these. So although we look upon ourselves as a new nation, so to speak, we occupy an ancient natural setting. And we need to be aware of that. And how do we relate to that? How do we think? Now, when I talk about the change that has to come over us, it's a change from thinking the human as the basic referent for everything to a realization that the basic referent is the land. And that we need to realize that the greatest obstacle facing us in this country is the Constitution. The Constitution is the ultimate, most profound context of preventing us from a renewal of our association with the planet.